Have you ever given any thought to why it is you do the things that you do? Why do you nod and say thank you to a total stranger when they hand you your coffee? Why do you get angry when you see something on the news or read something online that just doesn't sit right with you? For that matter, why doesn't it sit right with you in the first place? Though there are undoubtedly many reasons why you would feel the way that you feel, one contributing factor is likely your own moral standard. You say thank you to the stranger because it's the right thing to do. You laugh when someone tells a funny joke even if it's not that funny. You can be angry when something happens to someone very far away from you that has nothing to do with your everyday life, but it just doesn't feel right. Your own personal moral choice and ethical standards go into your everyday life. They affect everything that you do, everything you see, and how you react, and really how you feel. While this mentality is likely how you govern your day-to-day actions, it's typically not how you would play a character in a video game. And that makes sense for the most part, right? After all, you're not that character, you're just playing them. You are giving that character purpose and reason behind their actions. A developer might want you to play a character a certain way, but when it comes down to it, you're likely going to play the character the way you want to play them. And the way you play them might be different from the way I play them, or one of your friends plays them. With this sort of moral ambiguity placed upon video game characters, it can offer up some very interesting questions about moral choice and ethics in video games. And after doing a little bit of research, I discovered some interesting finds. When thinking about the topic of moral choice and ethics in games, the biggest thing that comes to my mind is the choice between good and evil. In a large majority of video games out there today, you're usually presented with this choice. Though it might not be seen on the surface at first, more often than not, you're making this choice even if you're not thinking about it. This distinction is obvious in games where what is right and what is wrong is the core to the entire story. You can take any large role-playing game and fit this mold. Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Final Fantasy, and so many other titles make this quite obvious. Yeah, Kefka is kind of a bad guy. We should probably stop him. But this idea of good versus evil is even present in games you wouldn't really think about. Mario versus Bowser, for sure. Bowser's the bad guy. Mario's the good guy. You play as Mario, so you stop the bad guy. The same goes for Link and Zelda trying to stop any collection of foes trying to resurrect Ganon or otherwise find the Triforce. Though you're probably not thinking about it, you're still playing a character that is good, defeating evil. But what about games that give the players a choice to be good or evil? Let's take a look at a game like Mass Effect. In this universe, you play as Commander Shepard, the male or female protagonist of BioWare's space epic. Throughout the game series, you are presented with many choices to make. Some of them have minimal impact on story and moral choice, but others literally play with the life and death of characters that you interact with. Toward the latter end of the first game, you're actually presented with a choice. One of your characters has to stay behind and they will die. The repercussion of this choice will be felt throughout the rest of the game series. If you let Ashley or Caden die, they're not there in Mass Effect 2 or Mass Effect 3. Then there are games that actually let you choose between being a good person or an evil person. It's actually intricate in the entire game series. You might find this in games like the Fable series or Knights of the Old Republic. In several instances, you are presented with a situation where you may be able to choose whether someone lives or someone dies. Whether you give charity to the orphanage or run it corrupt and destroy it. Or maybe you're enticed by the dark side of the Force and choose the more combat-oriented, powerful spells of the dark side. But when you're given this choice, why do you do it? You know that it's probably the wrong thing to do. You should probably help an orphan, or at the very least, not hurt somebody else. But why is it that we choose to do that? You know the situation is morally bad, yet you still choose to maybe do something that's not so right. For the most part, you reflect on the person you're controlling. In Fable, for example, you play as that character. The developers made the game so that you could play a character however you wanted, and by that, you're probably putting your own moral choice and ethics on what you do with that character. So getting back to the orphan example, you probably help them because you think it's the right thing to do. But what about those of us that don't help them? Are we morally wrong for doing that? Would we not help an orphan in real life? We know it's morally bad to set things on fire, blow up entire planets, and just do harm. But why is it fun to do that in a video game?
With me, Sister Hannah. Call me Hammer.
I would venture to guess that you would typically gravitate towards what you would choose to do in real life. Let's look at a situation in the video game Mass Effect. At one point in the story, you discover information about a genocide from one of the races towards another. You have a choice here where you can actually affect the outcome of one entire race's existence. You probably tend to lean toward what you would do in real life. I would venture to guess this is probably not destroying an entire race and trying to do what is morally correct. You kind of think of it as if you were in that situation. What would I do if I were Commander Shepard? How would I help my own crewmates? How would I help my team? How would I deal with this problem? You as the player probably do these things in real life at work or school or at home with your family. You know your responsibilities, you know who you're with and what needs to get done, and you know what you probably have to do to get those things done. But, and here it is for a video game, you're not actually that character. You can choose to play Commander Shepard however you want to play them. Maybe your Commander Shepard is actually a really bad person in the galaxy. Maybe your Commander Shepard doesn't care about that Krogan race and wants them to be obliterated. After all, this is your game and you're playing this character. Why not roleplay them however you want? Video games allow you to suspend your morals and play a character you wouldn't otherwise ever play in real life because, well, let's face it, if you did some of these truly criminal acts, you would probably be going to jail, if not worse. But you're not actually doing these acts, obviously. It's a video game. And that brings us back to what we were just talking about. This is a game. You're putting your moral choice into a game. And since the actions in this video game don't affect the real life, do your moral choices actually matter in this game world?
You know damn well what I'm talking about. The bomb. You're trying to blow it up. Have you lost your goddamn mind?
Let's take a look at another example. One of my favorite series of all time, Fallout. The series got a bit of a renaissance with Fallout 3 on the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. There is a moment in the game's story where you actually are given the choice to detonate an inactive nuclear bomb on an entire town. Doing so will undoubtedly destroy that entire town and anyone actually living in it. But it does give you some immediate gains in the game world. Physical wealth in the form of currency, an increased relationship with a certain powerful person in the capital wasteland, and on a personal level, I guess you could feel like you did something really cool by blowing up this bomb and it looked all neat. But on the other hand, you can choose not to blow up this bomb. Doing so lets the town of Megaton survive and its inhabitants actually prosper a bit. You receive some praise from the town folks that knew that might happen for not doing it, but you do get scolded by that powerful person. And obviously they're not going to give you that extra wealth you could have had. Lastly, in the game world, I do believe you get some perks depending on what you may have chose to do or not to do. But then we ask the question, does it actually matter? Obviously in the real world, you didn't actually blow up a town, so there was no repercussion there. But in the world of Fallout 3, what happens? Either way, the game progresses with no real significant change to the story. Whenever there's a mention of Megaton, if it's been destroyed, people just say, man, that kind of sucks, that town's gone. Or someone might know, hey, you're the guy that did that. And so they kind of scold you. But you just keep going. Your character doesn't feel anything different. Your character doesn't play any different. It would really just be up to you as the player to feel if you wanted to feel. You actually get the choice to feel for your action. The developers don't make you do a certain thing. In fact, you can actually choose to do none of those things and just let it go and not even interact with Megaton. But when you as the player go into that story and interact, you make the character's actions have meaning. And by that, I mean if you feel any specific way towards the characters living in Megaton, that's probably affecting your choice. You as the player are imparting your own feelings on the player character that you're playing as. They don't have any thoughts or actions, you give them to them. So unless you're playing a game solely by numbers and just want to get the best possible skills or the best possible outcome in terms of money or gains, the choice that you make is going to likely reflect how you want your character to be portrayed. I find it quite fascinating that we as players have options in many video games to play characters that we would otherwise normally not play as, or at least impart on them different moral choices than we would have in the real world. However, whenever I'm given an option, such as the Megaton example, I never blow up that town. I just feel too bad. I would never do that as a real person, and I can't imagine my characters doing those things. Even in games where you might actually be the villain, I also still sympathize with people because I just can't do what is wrong. For an example here, we can look at Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. As previously mentioned, you can actually do things that are on the light side of the Force or the dark side of the Force. Good versus bad. Heck, you can even stay in the middle of the road and try to do a little bit of everything. At the end of the game, it's actually revealed to you that you've been playing as a dark Sith leader. You, as that character, should be evil. You should be fighting the bad guys, yet here you are fighting with the good guys. Amnesia story elements aside, you're now given a choice. The creative developers of this game have presented to you with an option towards the end of your entire adventure. Do you continue fighting for what is morally right with the good guys that you've been with this entire time? Or do you fulfill the destiny that you have as a Sith leader? You should be ruling the galaxy with an iron fist. Yet here you are thinking about, do I want to stay with Karth? It's interesting if you compare these two examples. In the Fallout game, you're presented with almost nothing in terms of your character's story besides what you make for them. Yet here in Knights of the Old Republic, you're given a major story plot that should determine how you play a character. But for both games, you get the final choice. You can choose what you want to do as that character. I would argue what you choose to do in these pivotal moments likely comes down to what you feel is right in that time. If you want to know what I did not blow up Megaton, and I did not join the dark side of the Force. I need to be the savior that I want to be, because that makes me as a player feel good.
Jealousy of my power, of what I could become. They wanted me to bow and call them master and follow their code and obey their every order. But all the while they were exploiting my battle meditation for their own use.
Now, I would like to address something we haven't really discussed quite yet, and that would be how many of these choices are a little bit superficial and don't actually matter. In every video game, there is always some form of restriction. It's a game, after all. It's not the real world. The developers can only do so much and only give you so many options for the world to react to what you choose. So, for example, to keep talking about Star Wars, no matter if you choose light side or dark side at the end of the game, you are still presented with the same choices. You may have different dialogue options from the characters you interacted with, but for the most part the outcome is always the same. Think of it like a branching path. You choose one point, you can go left or right, and then you choose other points from there and go left or right again. As you keep going down these branching paths, you eventually get to an endpoint, one goal that the developers wanted you to find. In the Star Wars example, it would be finding out that you're Darth Revan, one of the leaders of the Sith. While you arrived here at a very different path than another player may have, you're still given the same options. Did it really matter you went to all those planets and freed all those people? Did it really matter that you always chose what was good or what was bad, when at the end you're given the same choice anyways with no real repercussion? I would argue that it only matters if you really want it to. With the restrictions that a developer has for a game, and a game that relies heavily on story, game designers are relying on you as the player to impart your own feelings of emotion towards these characters. My player character only feels happy or sad when I make them feel that way. They're not a real person, but I give them feelings. I experience their stories for them, and I make them have purpose. While this is much easier to do in newer games that have better visuals and more modern graphical styles, this is even true for older games. Look at the original Super Mario Bros., for example. Sorry Mario, your princess is in another castle? Yeah man, that kinda sucks. So, playing as Mario, I make him feel determined to keep going to find his princess. It's interesting to look at ethical choices in games this way. Since we as the player know it's not a real scenario, yet we still apply real-world feelings to these digital characters, it almost presents a sort of paradox. You can have one player play a character in a certain way that is completely opposite from another player playing them a completely different way. Yet, in both circumstances, that character exists in their world, and they are right for what they've done. That is what the character chooses. That is how the character should have been played. While I do admit this is kind of a deeper understanding of a game like Super Mario Bros., it can help you understand why you might choose what you want to do in a game like Final Fantasy or Mass Effect. What about the complete opposite end of this argument? What if we remove all moral and ethical choice from a player's mind? When they enter a game world, there would be no reason for them to care about any choices in that game at all. When you start Super Mario Bros., you're on the left side of the stage and need to go to the right, but why? There's no reason. As a player, it might be fun to jump on Goombas to get a high score, but at the end of the day, why are you doing that? We as the players need to know some reason about why we need to do these actions. Nintendo provided background information and story for this game, so we know the reasons behind these things. We know why Mario is the good guy and Bowser is the bad guy. But what if those things weren't there? What if there was no story elements or anything else to make you think one way or the other about a character? If there's no guidance for what is right or wrong, players wouldn't play the game, or more likely, the game just wouldn't be fun. Looking at more modern games, without a guidance for what is right or wrong, players probably won't play the game at all, or at the very least, they won't really enjoy it. If we look back at an example we used earlier in this video, we can talk about the Fable series. You as the player are given one main goal. How you get there is totally up to you. With this in mind, the developers know that you're going to choose things that are either going to be fun, or destructive, or happy, or based on your own moral compass. However, if you're not sure what you're doing is bad or how it might affect someone, the developers have implemented ways that the non-player characters, or NPCs in this game, will actually guide you towards a certain outcome. If you do something bad or harmful, like maybe steal or destroy something, townsfolk might notice and actually mention it to you, or see something in the background that will actually catch your ear so you know, hey, someone saw that and they're making me feel bad about it. But again, this is a video game and you can choose to play a character that way. Maybe your character in Fable is actually kind of a D-bag and is a terrible person. In this case, since it's a free-for-all with how you want to be morally and ethically in the game world, do what you want. Have fun with that character and be evil. Just know that your evil choices are making people feel really bad or sad or, maybe dead. The reactions from the NPCs and characters in this game really do come full circle. Now you have developers putting moral choices in their characters to make you as the player in the real world feel bad for what you did in the game world. You know it's bad to do those things, but now those characters in the world are also saying it's bad. It's a nice example of your music is bad and you should feel bad.
But when the sacrifices stop, we will come for him. This he knows.
That was a difficult decision, but you are alive and strong, and that is what matters most. Go back to Riva.
I think it would be kind of neat if we were able to ask these questions to the great philosophical minds of the past. Would Plato or Aristotle, for example, think it's ethically right to make a choice in a video game different than how you'd make one in real life? Why would it be any different in a video game if you choose to do something bad than it would be in the real world if you did the same thing? Ethically, even if this character is a digital creation, you're still imparting moral and ethical values onto them by making them do a certain action. You control them and put your mind into that character. So, in a sense, you doing those bad things is kind of like you doing those bad things. There's likely no real-world repercussions since it's just a video game, but you as a player still have to live with the choice that you did those things. In Fallout 3, for example, you have to live with the choice that you blew up Megaton and killed all of those people. Or in Knights of the Old Republic, you can feel good knowing that you stayed on the light side of the Force and did what was right for the galaxy.
Honestly, I usually keep my head down. I tend to get smacked around if I look customers in the eyes. But talk to Moriarty, he'll know more.
So with all that information in mind, let's go back to the main question we asked here. Do moral and ethical choices in video games actually matter? Largely, it comes down to how you feel as the player. In many modern video games, especially role-playing games, give you the choice to play a character however you prefer. If you want them to be a paragon and super nice throughout the galaxy, you can do that. If you want to be an evil ruler, you can do that too. Games allow you to live out your fantasy in a world that you couldn't otherwise do in real life. You as a person are probably good, you would likely do the right thing, but it might be fun to do the wrong thing in a game because you can't experience it otherwise. In so doing and destroying the lives of those characters in that game, are you, the player, a bad person? I think you, the character, could be a bad person, but even then, you, the character, are only bad if you think that they're bad. You're playing them, you're giving them the emotions and the feelings, you're making them choose the choices that they do choose, so why shouldn't they feel good about what they do, or bad about what they do? Regardless of that choice, how do you as the player feel? When you finally save Princess Peach at the end of Super Mario World, don't you feel good about your adventure? You saved this person that needed help. You stopped the bad guys. You had a great adventure doing it. So yeah, you probably feel good. You have good memories that are about fictional characters. When you play a game like Fallout 3, for example, and you do choose to do bad things throughout that entire capital wasteland, the character you're playing might feel good or bad, it just depends on you. What you may have done is morally bad, but since you have no obligation to this world, the choices that you make and the feelings that you feel really just come down to how you want to feel about them. You're not right or wrong for what you do, you're just doing what you wanted to do. So to wrap it all up and answer that question, do moral and ethical choices in games matter? Largely, I really think they don't. Games are meant to be an escape or fantasy from the real world. You go into them full well knowing that what you're doing is not real. The choices you make do not have repercussions on anyone else outside of that game world. The characters, societies, towns, and everything else in that world are always going to be restricted by what the developers can put into that game. Certain characters might say what you're doing is bad or what you're doing is good. What they're saying doesn't actually affect you as a player in the real world. I will admit, personally, it can be fun to do what you might not normally do in the real world or in a video game. Sometimes being the bad guy can be kind of fun. At the end of the day, though, I still know that what I'm doing is not morally right. It's causing people harm, making them feel bad, and otherwise making their life worse than it was before I interacted with them. While this is absolutely morally and ethically wrong in the real world, I would argue that it is in the game world too, but with no actual repercussions for what happens in that game world, I say go out there and have fun. Enjoy the fantasy and escape that a video game can give you. Live up the life that the game can give you and enjoy your experiences while you're there. Just make sure you leave them there and don't bring any of those bad choices back into the real world. Then we got something to really talk about. What do you think about morals and ethics in video games? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments or on Instagram over at HeyRPGaymer. If you like what you just heard, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate it. We are creating more video essays and all types of content each week. RPGaymer is a new YouTube channel by Patrick and Jason, that's me. And did you also know we have our own podcast? You can find us on your favorite podcasting platforms by searching for RPGaymer, that's RPGaymer. We'll also be posting the links in the description of this video. And once again, I appreciate you for following along. Now go out there and get gaming.